What's up, everyone? Welcome to Well Talk. My name is Matthew Fernandez. I am your host, and today's topic is going to be what in the well. And I wanted to call it that because I feel like there's a couple of things going on in the wellness world or the world of wellness that I want to address a little bit. If you've been tuning into the podcast, you know that earlier on in the season, I think it was season one. We're in season 4 now, but season 1, I talked about pop psychology and called it clickbait, and how there's a lot of, unfortunately, misinformation that's being provided out there, whether it's via online, social media, the media in general. And so I want to review some of that, but also tap into something as well in a way where I feel like, unfortunately, there's some distorted messages out there that are conflicting, and I want to call some of it out, but I also want to give you some tools that can help you and being able to identify like when something is not really seeming right. And usually the principle goes, if it seems like it's too good to be true, it usually is. So one thing you can quickly discern when you hear something that's like, wait, what? You mean I can just do this magical switch and everything aligns itself and everything just turns into this good, awesome life? Yeah, it's not necessarily how it works. And some of y'all might not want to hear this, but life can be tough sometimes, right? And sometimes we have situations where we really have to push and show that we can be strong internally, not just externally. You know, I think we put so much on ourselves physically, but we don't even see how much emotional strain can happen because a lot of times we're not looking at that, and you can't really see it physically until you start to see it manifest in a physical way. Like if you're dealing with insomnia, or you're dealing with agitation, or you're dealing with anxiety, things like that, you start to see it manifest through physical symptoms. But in talking about all this, I want to say, you know, there isn't a quick and easy fix when it comes to mental health and self-help and bettering yourself in this way of like, you just manifest it. You know, I think we're, unfortunately, this manifesting thing has really kind of spiraled out of control, and people are like sitting there thinking hard, like if I just think hard enough for it to happen, it's going to happen. That's not how it works. You got to put in the work, right? You got to put in the work, and that's usually what happens with therapy. You know, we have these times where we go and say, I went to therapy, didn't work. And then I often will ask somebody like, how long did you try therapy? And then they go, I went like 1 or 2 times and didn't work. Okay, well, that's not how therapy works. Therapy is a process. It's about processing the process. And you might be like, dude, that's what? But that's really what it is. It's about processing things. It's about sitting with somebody, sharing stories about what are, you know, your life, and getting the validation and the empathy and things like that. And there's a time and place for different types of maybe counseling or coaching, but let's not confuse coaching with counseling, and let's not confuse like a cheer up pep talk with therapy. There's a difference, and there's a time and place. And I think one thing that we really need to emphasize in the mental health world and wellness world is an integrated approach, right? I mean, coming from community mental health, one of the biggest things that we used to do was have a whole team that would do different types of things that would help the system and the team and the family that we were assisting. So we had like a parent advocate, we had a behavior specialist, we had a therapist, we had a psychiatrist, we had a family coordinator, like just different parts of this team. So when we talk about here's the answer and here's the fix, like usually it's a too good to be true type of scheme. You know, I'm all for motivation. I'm all for encouraging and reflecting on resiliency. My shirt says resistance will always be there, but so will your resiliency. I think a lot of what we need to focus on is some of the things that we've already accomplished and utilize that to encourage us to move forward. But I also think that there's a balance there with saying, you know what, sometimes I have moments where things are not going my way. Does it mean that that's how it's going to be for the rest of my life? No, it's not. There's good days, there's bad days, and sometimes we don't feel like doing things. Sometimes we do have thoughts, and you know, cognitive behavioral therapy refers to it as cognitive distortions, which are just this distorted way of thinking, whether it's catastrophizing or all or nothing thinking. And that's actually why I don't really like the word mindset, because a mindset is all or nothing thinking. It's essentially black and white. And if you don't have a gray sometimes, then you can't find the solution, or you can't necessarily problem solve because you have the unexpected moments that catch you off guard. And how do you stay focused or calm, cool, and collected during those moments? Well, it's essentially emotional regulation. That's why I often say waiting is huge in a lot of these things, because when we build our tolerance for being able to wait and be patient and emotionally regulate, we are helping ourselves learn how to self-soothe and how to cope under times of distress or under times of uncertainty. So what in the well is going on? Well, we have platforms all over the place where people are using their social media, their media or internet website, whatever, to promote this brand or promote something that isn't necessarily doing much good. It's just a lot of hype. It's a lot of feel good stuff. And I want to say that's not what therapy is. So even though you might have a life coach, that's great, but don't say that that's therapy. And if you are a life coach, you're not a therapist. There's other levels to this. And I think that a life coach can work alongside of a therapist, and a therapist can work alongside of a life coach. But again, there's a time and place for things. And I am a person of faith. I do believe that faith is one of the most important parts of a person's life because it really is the difference maker. But when it comes to saying, you know, things don't really look like they're going very well right now, and I don't feel like I can get through this, that's where that faith aspect takes place. So when we're talking about an answer, I think God is the answer. I think Jesus is the answer when we're referring to faith. But when we're talking about practical tools as well here on earth that can help us utilize coping strategies and utilize ways of being able to assist ourselves, that's where sometimes we miss it, because we tend to over spiritualize everything as well. And this goes for the church world. Unfortunately, mental health in the church is misunderstood in a lot of ways. And then unfortunately in the world, we misunderstand the faith principle and how you can integrate the two. Because I'm all about integration. And I think even in therapy, it's important to highlight that. That's one of the first things you should do is say, let me get an idea of this person and this person's background and what they believe, their belief system, and not have any judgments and things like that. That's why a lot of times when therapists even put like non-judgmental safe space, whatever, yeah, it should be a non-judgmental safe space. Unfortunately, we've had a lot of things that have happened that have made it so that people maybe don't feel safe in therapy, or maybe they feel like they had a malpractice issue. And that's for a different topic. But when it comes to therapy as well and getting services, if you don't like your therapist because you don't think it's a good fit, you can switch. You can go to another therapist. You can find another therapist. Now, you shouldn't be seeing two therapists at once that are doing, similar work. Maybe you're seeing a psychiatrist and then a therapist or a social worker as well, things like that, parent advocate, nurse practitioner, a doctor, things that people that are collaborating in a team. But when we're focusing on this wellness movement and this wellness wave, I think it's important for us to really emphasize the importance of collaborating as a team and not just saying that it's this one thing that's going to work and fix all of your problems. That's what I want to really emphasize here today in this episode. And I hope I've given some insights as to how that can be done. You can have a therapist, you can have a life coach, you can have a doctor, you can have different types of services that you're receiving that can help you in your journey throughout life and help you improve your mental health. It's kind of like when you're training for something, whether it's sports or even something outside of sports, but I'm going to use sports here. When you have like people that have dietitians, athletic trainers, weight trainers, conditioning trainers, all of those different types of training that you're getting, they are all what? Working together to help you achieve one common goal, and that's be able to perform and be well conditioned and be able to do the things that you've been training for and working on, not in practice, but in the game or in the actual tournament and things like that, because you're working on it. That's like therapy, behind the scenes work. That's like at home when you're doing the work at home, your homework that you get from therapy. That's like when the doctor tells you, hey, you got to do this, switch up your diet a little bit because you need to lower your blood pressure or your cholesterol, or hey, maybe this should be an improvement that you should focus in on. And your therapist is telling you too, hey, anxiety is definitely weighing on you. You should try these things. You're integrating different tools. But when it comes to just this one answer is the answer and that's it, I would be hesitant to say like, yeah, I did that and everything just changed for me. Like, it's an integrative approach. It's a way of thinking that you can say, hey, like, I'm in therapy and I'm working on things. I'm going to the gym. I'm eating better. I'm working on my habits, like what I'm watching, what I'm eating, like, how much stress is building up in your life. So when we see things that are out there that sound a little bit pop psych-ish, I want to say be cautious, do some investigating, and look for credentials, look for education, look for specific trainings, look for people that are certified with certain things. It's about being able to identify that someone is qualified to talk about what they're talking about, right? And I know that there's people out there that mean well, and they're really trying to just help and motivate. And that's great. But I'm saying when it comes to wellness and focusing in on the things that will really help you, that's where it's important to really do your research, really focus in on a person's qualifications. Is it psychotherapy? Is it life coaching? Is it general counseling? Is it pastoral counseling? What type of counseling or coaching or therapy is being done? And if you're doing them all, you can integrate them. You can have your therapist collaborate with your pastor, collaborating with your life coach, collaborating with even your family. If you want that, it can be a team effort and approach. And I think that is one of the most effective ways of learning how to take better care of yourself. It's also like that when it comes to psychology. One of the things that I think has stood out to me the most is that every modality has strengths. There's not necessarily such thing as a perfect modality, and that's why a lot of therapists or clinicians nowadays try to steer away from being purists in their theory. They take from certain theories and integrate maybe CBT with some attachment. You know, not very many people use psychodynamic anymore, but you can still take some of the id, ego, and super ego and maybe break it down a little bit and utilize that to kind of help figure out impulse and impulsivity and the drive that we have and balancing it out. You know, attachment style. That's something that I think is really great to look into as well. Attachment, family systems, you know, but when it comes to the integration of them, they start to cover more bases. And that helps more because you're able to use different pieces that can help you for different times and moments. So that's what I wanted to highlight today. The wellness movement and wave. It's great to have so many people jumping on board, but it's also important for us to be cautious and remember that integration is one of the most effective ways to best take care of yourselves.